plateau, it does not mean your weight has stopped moving. It means it's stopped moving and you're checking all the boxes that produce weight loss.
The more that we can just accept that it's going to be hard and it's going to be difficult and you're not going to love it and motivation isn't going to show up all the time and you're going to have to make changes. The moment that you actually accept and embrace that is the moment that you can actually change. A lot of people on the internet have no education and no background in any type of anatomy, physiology, metabolism, muscle building.
Well, intelligent people go into any kind of conversation or podcast or what have you, assuming they might be wrong.
All of those things impact calories that you burn.
A lot of people get misled by Apple Watches and other things that track calories burned because it drastically overestimates it for the most part. So you're not burning as many calories as you think.
Right. The quality of the calories that you take in impacts the amount of calories that you will burn. These are not completely separate. And so this is where if you cut calories and you do not strength train to maintain that lean mass, your body will break it down.
You just never got the education on nutrition, so you don't really know how to eat for your body or how to eat to lose weight or how to portion control. And it's determined before you even open your eyes for the day. Because I can tell you right now, nobody on earth, all other things controlled, loses weight by eating more. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't happen. But welcome to the podcast, everybody. Today we're going to talk about metabolism because not many people understand it. We're going to debunk some myths. We're going to talk about what metabolism actually is, what influences it, and how you can keep it healthy and running just fine up until your 80s and 90s.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk around your metabolism being damaged or how it slows down as you age. And a lot of it's just really stupid, misleading information. So I figured it'd be a good time for us to talk about what your metabolism is, what makes it up, and overcome some of the stuff that you guys believe.
Every single day when you open up your phone, there is going to be 100 different talking heads saying likely 100 different things. Mm-hmm. And if you continue to expose yourself to 100 different, maybe even more than 100, maybe 1,000 different sources of information, you are going to stay perpetually confused. We don't have an information problem. We have an application problem. And if you have too many chefs in the kitchen, your pot will continue to spoil. And what I've come to find is that a lot of people, the feedback that we get a lot is, you guys are the voice of reason amongst all this bullshit that we see and are exposed to every single day. And I'm not saying we're the best in the world by any means, but everything that we advocate is evidence-based, meaning it has been proven. It has been abundantly proven through randomized human control trials, all the empirical evidence that we have on the human body, specifically towards the people that we serve, which is primarily middle-aged women. You guys, listen to this. Everything that we advocate, we do it for your best interest. We're not trying to piss you off by having, a super sharp take on this stuff. We're convicted in what we believe, and it is predictable and consistent in the people that we help and have done so for a decade between the two of us.
And I also want to state that it's not a belief. These are facts. Like, a lot of people on the internet have no education, no background in any type of anatomy, physiology, metabolism, muscle building. I've studied this stuff both in my undergraduate and my master's program, and the fundamentals don't change. Your body hasn't evolved so rapidly in the last 100 years that things are now different than they were 100 years ago. And so it's paying attention to what you need to pay attention to and understanding what is factual information that is going to actually work versus a gimmicky, markety, bullshitty, rapid fix that requires minimal effort, minimal time, and is going to be easy for you. Like that, anything that is positioned that way is bullshit. And the more that we can just accept that it's going to be hard and it's going to be difficult and you're not going to love it and motivation isn't going to show up all the time and you're going to have to make changes. The moment that you actually accept and embrace that is the moment that you can actually change. But until then, you're going to continue to seek out the most jaw-dropping, simple, easy, effective, short-term solution that you can find. And I will tell you there's hundreds of them, but it's all completely a waste of time.
You want to be an intelligent person? You listening right now. I'm in your ears. Maybe I'm playing in your car speaker. Maybe I'm in your iPod headphones. Nobody listens to iPods anymore. You want to be intelligent, right? Well, intelligent people go into any kind of conversation or podcast or what have you, assuming they might be wrong. The quicker that you assume that you might be wrong about how you're going about all this, the quicker you can be receptive to information that could very well change your life. Without further ado, what is metabolism?
Well, simply put, it's every single chemical reaction that happens in your body that keeps you alive. That's your metabolism.
Some people also layer in kind of an analogy of it being the thermostat of your body. It determines.
Well, regulating body temperature is a part of homeostasis. So that's a part of it, but it's not the whole.
Right. More so the thermostat applying to how fast or how slow you utilize energy, you metabolize energy, right? It's a summation of a lot of processes in your body. And the word metabolism can refer to several different things as well. Like, for instance, your body metabolizes hormones. Your body metabolizes the food that you eat. It metabolizes any kind of prescription medication that you take. And everybody has, a little bit different rates at which they metabolize or efficiency at which they metabolize all those things. So that being said, the first thing we can obviously talk about here is the notion that your metabolism slows down as you age.
So I think the first component that we have to discuss is what is it that makes up your metabolism, right? So it's the sum of all chemical reactions that happen in your body. Fantastic. What does that mean? So you have your basal metabolic rate, right? Which is your entire body mass, lean body mass, fat mass, just mass, right? Everything that you require in order to maintain your current body composition, right? If you were to do nothing at all, just at rest, right? That's your basal metabolic rate.
So what influences basal metabolic rate?
Lean body mass, right? Obviously hormones. So your thyroid is going to help with metabolic pathways and conversions. Your entire skeletal muscle, right? So every single contraction, every single cell, fat mass too. Fat mass requires energy in order to maintain itself.
And muscle requires more energy to maintain itself.
Yeah, slightly more. I mean, depending on how much lean body mass you have, which we'll get into when we talk about how do you prevent decreases in your metabolic rate as you age. But yes, every cell within your body requires energy to sustain itself if you do nothing at all. That's all you need to understand. So if you are bedridden, there's still a certain amount of calories that you require to intake in order not to have cell turnover in general.
Your basal metabolic rate is the vast majority of your total caloric burn for the day. It's 70% on average, a little more, a little less for some people, of the total calories that you expend. So on the output side of the input-output equation, which determines your weight loss or weight gain, by the way, the amount of calories you consume, and then you have the amount of calories you expend. The amount of calories you expend is made up of four main categories, the biggest of which is the one we just explained, basal metabolic rate. And it's determined before you even open your eyes for the day because of everything that Kate just outlined.
Yeah, it's 70% of your daily caloric needs, which means you don't have to earn your food. A lot of people overcomplicate, should I restrict calories because I just had an injury and I had surgery and I can't exercise? It's like, no. But I digress. That's the biggest factor when it comes to your energy demands, right? Basal metabolic rate. On top of that, you have something called NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is how much you get up and down, how much you move, how much you fidget, not intentionally. This is not exercise. This is just how much you normally move throughout the day. I talk with my hands. You guys have watched me long enough. You know that I do that. You blink, your respiratory rate, how much you, again, all of those things impact calories that you burn, right? So we've got basal metabolic rate. Now we have NEAT, which is just non-exercise activity thermogenesis, movement, regular daily movement, AKA steps is a good way we track this, but I know Matt will hit on that in a little bit. The next layer of that is TEF, the thermic effect of food. This is where the diet culture narratives get very convoluted. People who say, stop. People who say calories in, calories out neglect to understand that the quality of the food plays a role in the calories out part of the equation. These are not independent variables, right? The quality of the calories that you take in impacts the amount of calories that you will burn. These are not completely separate. And so thermic effect of food is what balances that out. This is why people say calories don't matter. It's the type of food that you eat. Those things are not isolated variables. So when we think about the thermic effect of food, right, this is how many calories you will burn simply digesting that food. So protein has the highest thermic effect of food. Behind that, fiber, and then carbohydrates, and then fat. So all of these things play a role in digestion because just to digest food requires energy to do so, to break those things down.
And so as we go down the totem pole here, the non-exercise activity, right, is 15% or more on average. So now we're at 85% of your total calories burned comes from your basal metabolic rate. So how many calories it takes for you to just function at a baseline. And then your non-exercise activity, which is everything you do outside of intentional exercise the rest of the day. That's 15%. So we're at 85% so far. The thermic effect of food, which Kate just broke down, the amount of calories it takes for you to digest your food, right? And so this is where you can have a light bulb come on. The quality of your nutrition matters because it takes more energy to break down high protein, nutrient dense food. So if you're eating a bunch of hyper palatable processed food, your thermic effect of food is going to be lower compared to somebody who's eating more nutrient dense food more often. 10%. So now we're at 95% of your total calories burned day to day comes from those three categories. And what's the last one?
And the last one is exercise.
Exercise.
5% of your daily caloric expenditure and replenishment needs come from your actual physical activity. So exercise. If you go strength training, if you go for a run. I think people think that it burns so many calories and they get to make up for that when it's a very minimal amount of calories that you burn and or would need to replenish if you were focusing on maintaining your weight, for example.
Now, most people just got their brains turned upside down because they're like, oh my God, how can exercise only be 5% of my total caloric burn. Well, let's just break that down in a very logical way. How long do you typically exercise? Usually 45 minutes to an hour for most people. The average American averages less than 2 hours of exercise per week, but the average session, we'll just say for somebody who's into working out, 30 minutes to an hour. Well, there's 24 hours in a day. Mm-hmm. So that's a very small fraction of the time that you actually spent intentionally exercising. And on top of that, most people don't get their heart rates up that high when they do exercise, especially if you don't have an athletic background. You haven't yet conceptualized intensity of your training, or your perceived rate of exertion is very low, whether you know it or not. And that's okay. You're still learning. But that just driving the point home that you don't burn a whole lot of calories via exercise in totality. And on top of that, a lot of people get misled by Apple Watches and other things that track calories burned, because it drastically overestimates it for the most part. So you're not burning as many calories as you think. If you didn't grow up with any kind of education or teaching on nutrition, if you have very little nutritional literacy, we'll say, I'm really weird. I was brought up by two bodybuilders, and so I had the nutrition education from birth, right? And most people don't have that privilege. And so I never had to learn this stuff as a 30-year-old adult. It was already ingrained in me. The vast majority of people either were more active in their, early years up to age, 22, 24, because of either athletics or you were out and about more. Things start to change, priorities shift, you have kids, you have a job, and so knowingly or not, you become more sedentary as you age. And most people don't realize it. It's just you just never got the education on nutrition, so you don't really know how to eat for your body, or how to eat to lose weight, or how to portion control, or how to cope with any kind of stress or duress without using food as a soothing device. And then also you also have become less active overall. Remember, 15% or more coming from non-exercise activities. So if your step count decreases over time, guess what else is going to decrease over time? Your energy output. And so if we go back to the input-output side of the weight loss or gain equation, the output column is gradually shrinking if you are moving less. And that's just one factor of this equation.
I don't say this a lot, mostly because I had to learn this the hard way. For most people, it's not what you don't know, it's what you think you do. The other factor, as far as TEF, or the quality of your diet, is it's really important to understand your body requires certain vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients. When you go into a very aggressive diet or something that is very rigid and or restrictive, many people develop nutrient deficiencies. And those things can increase cravings. They can increase overeating, because your body is trying to hit a certain threshold of vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients, and that dictates how you feel. And so you might look a certain way and feel like trash, and that is not the outcome that you're looking for. And so you have to understand that each macronutrient plays a vital role in your overall health. And when you think about those things, people who eat a ketogenic diet, for example, you can gain weight on a keto diet. Fat is 9 calories per gram, whereas protein is 4 calories per gram and carbs are 4 calories per gram. And so it's very easy when it comes to fat, because it's dense. I mean, you think about oils, butters, seeds, nuts, like those are all very, very high fat for the serving size that you get. People, when they often start paying attention to the quality of their diet, they eat more, but it's not more calories, it's more volume, right? So there's more fiber. It takes longer to digest protein, so their digestion rate is slowed down, right? So they feel fuller for longer, but they're not eating more calories. But when you eat high quality foods, there's more volume naturally, right? If you're eating a cheeseburger versus a steak and potatoes, well, there's more total volume in that meal and some vegetables on that versus the density in that one cheeseburger.
So this is why people in our program, a lot of them will always say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm losing weight, but I feel so full. It feels like I'm eating so much all the time. You're not actually eating more caloric volume. You're
Correct.
Eating more satiating food. Mm-hmm. So you feel fuller, but you're consuming less calories. Therefore, you're in a calorie deficit. I mean, people that we work with, obviously, mostly striving towards weight loss. So that's the goal. And you're losing weight as a result. You're not eating more calories. You're eating less calories, but it's more filling. So it feels like more food.
Correct. So a calorie is a unit of energy. And so you can diversify or spread out those units of energy with higher quality foods that are more satiating based on the composition of that structure, right? Versus something that is very simple. It's very calorically dense, but it's not high volume. There's not a ton of digestion. Let's say a cup of ice cream is 270 calories on average, something like that. Mm-hmm. Right? 270 calories of protein is going to take way longer to digest and keep you much fuller than something that is highly palatable, right? Hyperpalatable foods are not just carbs. People kind of demonize carbs and they say that they're just sugar and they're high palatable and people are addicted to those things. That's all hearsay. That's bullshit. Hyperpalatable foods, and there's researchers who study this as far as, again, the standard American diet. They test and spend billions of dollars on making sure the texture, the flavor, the crunch, right? All the things that we eat when it comes to the really delicious things that we love, like people study that so that you will overeat it because they care more about consumer behavior. How can I get them to buy more? Right? Because it makes them more money for them to do so versus, is this super healthy for me to be giving people to eat constantly? There's no ethical compass around that. That is a marketing and it's a business. And I think being in business, it's easy to see how people position different businesses. Most people don't even get an education in that. But if you could understand marketing, you know, a lot of it is more so manipulating the predisposition psychologically of people to continue to overconsume things. And in America, that is relevant to our culture. We just consume too much shit. I digress. But the point being that if you focus on the quality of your diet, I guarantee you eat a cup of Greek yogurt and a cup of berries, which berries are a lot of volume for minimal calories. Again, the energy unit as far as a calorie. You will be super freaking full versus an omelet or an egg sandwich or something very, very French toast or pancakes, right? If you just compare those two things, try it out and see, and you'll notice, wow, you ate 200 calories less and you're fuller for way longer.
Going back to metabolism, right? So those are some misconceptions that people have. You hear these stories of people like, oh, I didn't start losing weight until I started eating more. Let's look at all the other variables there that likely took place. They probably started eating more nutrient-dense foods. So they felt fuller, and then in their mind, since they're probably not tracking calories, they tricked themselves into thinking they were eating more, but they actually weren't eating more. So then you have that factor. They're eating less. Also, the nutrient-dense food is taking more calories to digest. So they're burning more calories digesting the food. Again, that's 10%. It's a big chunk of your caloric burn every day. You decrease the input column, you increase the output column on the thermic effective food side. People generally, when they start to get their shit together, what have you, whatever their intention is, also start to move a little bit more. So there's your other 15% of the non-exercise activity part. So I can tell you right now, nobody on earth, all of the things controlled, loses weight by eating more. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't happen. But as a byproduct of eating more nutrient-dense food, those things take place. They're consuming less calories overall because it's more filling. They're moving more usually, so their output's expanding, their input shrank a little bit, and therefore they get some weight loss. It's not because they started eating more calories. That doesn't exist. This notion that you need to eat more to lose weight doesn't exist. There's other things that you need to change and things you need to stop doing in order to make that outcome happen. But nobody loses weight from eating more. It does not happen. Other factors are taking place.
Now, this is where people get confused. Your metabolism is not static. Your metabolism is dynamic. So it changes on a daily basis. When you go through any type of weight loss, your natural resting energy demands are going to decrease. That is not a bad thing, right? That is called adaptive thermogenesis. As I alluded to earlier, every single cell in your body, including your fat cells, requires energy to sustain itself, right? This is why we go into a caloric deficit, an energy deficit, because we deprive our body from nutrients, which is why you need to strength train to maintain lean mass when you're dieting and not just slash calories and be more sedentary.
Now, when she says deprive yourself of calories, what she means is just pretty much control calories, right? Restrict
You're in a
calories.
calorie deficit.
Right. So I say that because that doesn't mean 1,500 calorie deficit. That's not what that means.
300 to 500 calories.
300 to 500
max.
Calories max of a deficit. And that means underneath maintenance. What is maintenance? The amount of calories it takes for you to maintain your weight, not gain or lose. 300 to 500 below that.
And again, when we talk about these numbers, everybody wants to know their magical calorie deficit numbers. It's going to vary on a daily basis. It is not a static number. It's not like, oh, you get this right number and all of a sudden magic just happens. Like, you need to be willing to track your intake, get an average. Those are your average maintenance calories if you're maintaining your weight. And then you drop that by 300 to 500 calories. Now, the other things that will impact any type of fat loss, neat. So are you keeping your activity levels consistent? What people neglect to acknowledge is that when you reduce calories, that your body also adapts to that calorie intake. So it slows down metabolic processes. Again, this is to keep you alive. So you naturally burn less calories at rest. That's not a bad thing. It is a part of putting yourself in an energy deficit. And so if you aren't paying attention to how much movement you naturally get, you will naturally move less. And this is why people think they plateau. No, you just stop moving as much. And again, it could be little things. Talking with your hands, maybe you don't anymore. I know when I diet, I'm just like blah. Right? I'm not conscious of that stuff, but if I pay attention to it, I will notice. And then I have to make up for that energy expenditure somewhere else. Maybe I increase my step count. So when you lose weight, any mass, right? You are also reducing the amount of calories that you need to maintain that because it's gone. It is no longer there needing calories. You've depleted that energy source. That is normal. It is going to happen, right? It's not your metabolism is not damaged. It adapts. I think that's just important as a concept to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you think about, if you do encounter a plateau, now, again, some context with a plateau, that doesn't mean the scale stopped moving today. Okay. Like, stop living and dying by the scale. It's a tool and you need to view it as such. But if you obsess over it, it pisses you off and then you jump ship because it went up today, because it's going to happen. It fluctuates no matter what you do. There's people who fast for 72 hours and the scale goes up. Your body's just like that. It's going to happen. But on average, if you just look at, if you plateau, that means, let's define a plateau. A plateau does not mean your weight has stopped moving. It means it's stopped moving and you're checking all the boxes that produce weight loss. So for example, if your weight plateaus, and I'm talking like 3 to 4 weeks, zero movement, and you're also tracking your steps, and your steps are maintaining at a certain level. I'm not going to give you a perfect step goal. I'm just going to encourage you to track them and increase them over time. You can't just go from 2,000 to 10,000 steps. Got to become a value over time. That being said, steps, protein intake. What's your protein intake look like? The average American consumes around 30 grams of protein a day. So lots of room for improvement there. And that's also a value that develops over time. You can't just jump to 100 grams plus of protein overnight. It takes time to get used to consuming protein. It's more filling. It's more satiating. Takes more energy to digest. So the more that you work at it, the better your weight loss will be. So walking, protein, workouts, what do those look like? How often, how intense, and what's the modality you've chosen? Are you getting stronger through these workouts? Are you maintaining or building or developing muscle tissue, right? So if you don't even want to track calories, if you just focus on those 3 things, I guarantee you that's your next 25 pounds. Those of you who have 25 to lose, you do those 3 things, you lose 25 pounds if you do them consistently, right? Calorie tracking overwhelms you. If you're willing and open to track calories to some extent, that's the 4th block you want to look at. And so if you want to look at your caloric consumption over time, and when I say track your calories, I don't mean just eyeball it. You don't have the skills to eyeball food yet. If you are really serious about getting a pulse on how many calories you're consuming, and you can do it without being super OCD about it, then food scale, all your oils, your butters, your dressings, all that stuff that people neglect to track, your cream in your coffee, you got to look at that and you got to be willing to track it so you can get an accurate number. Now, if all that is consistent, you won't plateau. Now, if you do plateau, look at one of those 4 categories, and maybe I recommend looking at steps first, because the idea is not to lose weight as fast as possible. It's to lose weight while eating as much as you can. And so because that gives you the fuel to move more, to have productive workouts, to have good cognitive function throughout the day. If we slash calories too early, there's nowhere to go from there. So we want to keep the calorie intake as high as you can while still being in a deficit, ideally. I would look at steps first. That's usually the metric that most people miss. It's very simple, it's free, it's accessible. So if you plateau with your weight loss, look to increase your steps, your overall movement, before you take away calories. And that's likely going to keep you going longer than the person who keeps slashing calories and eating less and then is burning less calories from the thermic effect of food. It has less energy to put into their workouts, is moving less because they've slashed calories. So now you've got your output column shrinking along with the input. We want to keep the output as high as we can.
One thing that's important that you alluded to earlier is we were talking about muscle and the amount of calories per pound in muscle versus fat. Now, what's really important for you guys to know is that a pound is a pound is a pound is a pound is a pound, like a calorie is a calorie is a calorie is a calorie, right? A unit of measure is a unit of measure, right? The difference between fat and lean body mass is going to be density, right? And the bigger thing there is volume. How much space does 1 pound of fat take up versus 1 pound of muscle? Very, very, very different levels of density. And so this is where people fixating on the scale is going to drive you insane. So I would encourage you to just, throw it out if you need to, and focus on the habits and behaviors that you're trying to build. Because that, if you stay consistent with it, is going to get you to where you want to go. The scale just fucks with your headspace. So if you're somebody who gets emotionally pulled one way or the other and you start and stop over and over again based on a number, just put it away for a while and focus on what you need to do. As I said earlier, right, your basal metabolic rate includes lean body mass. Lean body mass is important. On average, the estimated variance between 1 pound of fat and 1 pound of lean body mass is about 27 calories at rest, right? So that doesn't feel like a ton. However, lean body mass is also very, very calorically expensive. And so this is where if you cut calories and you do not strength train to maintain that lean mass, your body will break it down, right? Via gluconeogenesis, where we can break tissue, lean body mass, into glucose, gluconeogenesis, right? Generating glucose from another substrate. And that will be used as fuel. And so if you do not want to be skinny fat, or you don't want to compromise lean mass, and you don't want your metabolism to tank, then you need to make sure that strength training is a part of the habits that you're trying to build, right? This is for longevity long term. When we talk about your decrease in metabolism as you age, right? It's 3 to 8% per decade after the age of 30. So it's not anything that's like, oh my God, I turned 40 and my metabolism just died. Like, no, it didn't. But between the ages of 30 and 40, you probably became more sedentary. You probably didn't work out as much. You probably changed modality, right? I'm 32. And after I turned 32, my friend invited me to Pilates. I've never been to a fucking Pilates class in my life. But now that I'm like almost going to be a mom, it's kind of like, I guess I should Pilates, you know? So,
but you're not stopping your strength training.
no, I'm actually strength training much more, which is good for me. But I digress. The point being that your metabolism you don't just turn a certain age and all of a sudden your metabolism just stops, right? Your metabolism and how it functions is a consequence of how you have lived your life, how you have invested in maintaining or building, structuring tissue, right? Lean body mass. Women, I say this because I love you. You're not going to get bulky because you pick up a heavy weight. It's just not physiologically possible for you. It's not necessarily possible for most men to get huge. That's why they use steroids. And so just understanding that your body's natural proclivity to put on tissue, again, it is expensive, which means building it is expensive and then maintaining it is expensive. And so your body doesn't necessarily want to do that. And so you want to make sure that you're driving it to the upper limit. Everybody has a genetic upper limit with how much lean body mass that they can acquire and maintain. Right. And this is IGF.
IGF-1.
Right. And so it's just, and that is.
And also myostatin.
I was going to say, but it's relevant to myostatin, right? Isn't it a precursor?
Yes.
All of those things genetically are going to determine how much lean body mass that you can acquire and how much your body wants to maintain. If you do not move your body in a way that challenges your lean mass to maintain that structure, you will lose it. And so just understanding your body is either fighting something or it's building something. Those are the two states that you're in most.
Women. Middle-aged women, I love you as well. You irk the fuck out of me on a daily basis with your questions, your anxiety about all your overcomplication and your fixation on supplements that aren't going to fix the problem. And here's the truth you need to hear. If you think that your metabolism slowed down because you turned 40, you don't understand metabolism.
And that's why we're talking about it today.
I promise you, there is no woman on this earth who is eating sufficient protein consistently day after day, lifting weights in a way that challenges her, AKA it's hard work, and she's getting stronger by the decade. She's active and has a high step count and is eating nutrient-dense food, has awareness over caloric intake, that is struggling after the age of 40. It doesn't happen. There are many examples, my mother included, of women who have maintained those things and breezed their way through perimenopause and menopause. Now, I also will always advocate hormone replacement if you have hormone deficiency, which perimenopause and menopause are hormone deficiencies. I started a company to help women in perimenopause and menopause via hormone replacement. But that being said, every hormone client we have, I tell them, if you take hormones and you don't fix your lifestyle, you will feel better and look the same. Your body is a rolling average. What you see in the mirror every single day is a rolling average of what you have done over the past 10 to 15 years. That is why you look the way that you do. Now, that being said, there is no woman who, if she's checking those four things, is not progressing, maintaining, or looking and feeling the way that she wants. It is, you are a product of your lifestyle over the last 10 to 15 years. You may think you're doing the same things and gaining weight. You may think that the same things don't work, but the reality is you are moving less than you realize. You either aren't strength training enough or you never started. You're consuming less protein or you never were consuming enough protein to begin with. And you're eating more and don't realize it because of life's stressors, priorities, and the ways that you cope and soothe with food when no one's watching behind closed doors.
The other thing I want to say about hormones.
Yeah, we can talk about hormones. Let's talk about hormones because I know everybody's wondering about hormones.
We did a whole thing. I just want to make this as a hard truth. Most women wait until the age of 40 and 45, and they say it's their hormones. But you have likely struggled with gaining and losing the same 15 to 20 pounds over and over again for 20 decades prior to that moment. 20 years prior to that moment.
200 years.
Yeah, you old. So
Medusa.
2 decades prior to that moment, right? Every single client that I've talked to, that we've worked with, that I have calls with, it's not like they hit 40 and now they're struggling with their weight.
All of them.
It's the fact that they've been struggling with their weight, with food, with exercise, with being consistent, with losing weight and gaining it back, with different diets, with different food noise, different beliefs around food for decades of their life. And so even with optimal hormones in their 20s, in their 30s, they struggle with their weight. It's because they never built and cultivated the habits and the behaviors that you need to create a body composition that then you can maintain with more effort when you get into perimenopause and menopause, because there are certain changes physiologically that happen that make it harder. But it didn't just get hard the moment that you turned 40, right? And that story has to die because it didn't just happen like that. You didn't hit perimenopause and all of a sudden you blew up, right? It's because you never actually had any type of systems or habits or behaviors or values around treating your body well, fueling it appropriately, recovering optimally, and chilling the fuck out. And if you had, then perimenopause and menopause wouldn't have that big of a change in your composition. It would just make you more fatigued, less motivated, more lethargic, more moody, right? And likely not sleeping that great.
So let's talk about that. And then here's where I will, after I've, metaphorically slap you in the face with the truth, I will come in and say, yes, hormones absolutely fucking matter, right? As Kate just laid out, if you are fatigued because you're in perimenopause, your progesterone has declined, and you're sleeping like shit, and you're not gonna have a lot of energy. You're gonna feel like you're in a fog all the time. When your estradiol depletes in menopause, you have receptors in your belly. There's over 6 different types of estrogen, and you lose the ones specifically that interact with receptors in your midsection. That when you lose those, you're more prone to storing it in your midsection, right?
Why?
So. Huh?
Why?
Like the mechanism of action? I'd have to go look at my literature on it. I have a whole thing on it with the World Link Medical stuff. But estradiol, for example, is one of the ones that keeps that from happening, and that's the one that primarily depletes, whether it's from a oophorectomy or from medical menopause or just menopause in general. That's where the menopause belly comes in. It is loss of estradiol primarily. That's why it just seems to just be like Velcro on the midsection. When you replace that, it has a dramatic impact on that. So that being said, you lose progesterone, estradiol. Many women lose testosterone. And so then you're going to have an impact on your ability to, gain muscle tissue, which again impacts basal metabolic rate, like we just said. Now, that being said, and then you throw thyroid in there. Thyroid does have a direct impact on basal metabolic rate. How big of an impact? Pretty small comparatively to the lifestyle piece. I mean, we worked with a lot of women post-menopause that don't have any of these hormones that still progress. Kate competed as a bodybuilder with none of those hormones. Like all you had was DHEA. That was like your saving grace, which DHEA is a very important hormone as well. So that being said, if those are ripped from your body, from Mother Nature, you're going to feel a hell of a lot less likely to go out and walk, to put forth energy in a workout. It makes it a hell of a lot harder. It doesn't change the things that you need to do to cultivate that outcome, but it does impact how motivated you feel and the energy that you have to do those things. Sure. So that's where I have a lot of compassion. It's why I started Slay, because I want to help women in that stage of life. At the same time, as a coach, it is not my job to enable victimhood and tell you that your problems are because of an invisible villain. It is my job to empower you and make you a creator. And I do that by making you take the wheel of ownership. And if you think you are hormone deficient, or if you're in perimenopause, menopause, etc., get lab work and get your hormones replaced and get to fucking work. You are the creator. You are the sovereign being who has control of your outcome. And so take control, get your hormones replaced if you're hormone deficient, and then get the fucking work, and you will get the results that you want. But I will say, with all that being said, you can still get there without hormone replacement. You can. You can.
And I think one thing I would encourage people to think about, and I remind myself of this very often, when I'm in a position where I feel like I'm stuck, I just remind myself that there's always a choice. And so I can feel bad and still go to the right. I can have not slept well and still get in movement. I can be stressed out and still take a walk. And so you cannot make your decision based on the context of how you feel, right? Because feelings aren't the thing that dictates your choices. Your decision making is what dictates your choices. And so a lot of women, I know that I particularly, right, live in the domain of psychology. And so when people come and talk to me, they talk about, well, I don't feel like I'm ready, or I don't feel like I can actually do it, or I don't feel like I deserve it, or I don't feel like I'm worthy. And then you can blame the variable, right? It's menopause, it's my age, it's my husband, it's whatever. It's we continue to trickle down and then create excuses. And excuses are valid most of the time, which is why they're incredibly difficult. All of that aside, I think it's important to acknowledge those things can exist and you can still make a different choice, right? You don't have to feel ready or deserving or capable, or, you can have fear. All those things can exist and you can still choose to pursue the thing anyway, right? Because the reality is your decisions, your choices, your actions are what is going to dictate the outcome, not your feelings. And so while I will always empower women and allow for you to meet those feelings with compassion, we don't want to compartmentalize them. And again, I have compassion for them. It's a hard place to be in. And also you can choose differently. right? And so they're not dependent things. You can feel how you feel and think how you think and, have shame, guilt, apathy, fear.
100%, y'all. And so let's, in summary, and I know this has been probably a lot of what you don't want to hear, but that's our job. Our job is we are never going to be these people. And this is what a lot of people appreciate about us from the feedback I've received and Kate has received. We're not going to tell you what you want to hear just so we can gain your business or trust. That is never what we're going to do, because the people we work with, they come to us and they're like, man, I'm ready. I'm done with this dieting bullshit. I'm done with the all or nothing mentality. I'm done making excuses. Like, I'm ready to make a change in my life. Those are the people that we work with, and they fucking kill it with us, because that is a position of power. When you are still in that, and that's that mentality of I'm one diet away or one blueprint away, or I'm in this position because something that's, not my fault. Well, you're going to stay stagnant. That's the familiar neighborhood of victimhood and excuse making and trying to blame all of your outcomes on invisible forces that aren't you. The faster you come to the conclusion that you are the sole proprietor of your outcomes in life, including your health, including your body, that is the second that you will start to take different steps and produce a different outcome. And for the vast majority of women that I speak to prior to joining our program, they are breaking a familial cycle. They're in this cycle of, well, this is the example my parents gave me. It fucked me up a little bit, and I don't want that for my kids. And I want to learn how to do this right, to be their exemplar so that they never have to struggle the same way I did. That's the opportunity that you have, because your kids, your grandkids, they're watching you and they're absorbing everything that you do. And the way that you live your life and you go about health, which is arguably the most important factor of your life, because I think it was Confucius that said the person who has their health focuses on everything. The person who doesn't have their health focuses on one thing, and their fucking health, because without it you have nothing. And so arguably the most important thing you can focus on. That being said, if you accept that you are the sole proprietor of that outcome, that is the very second you sit in the driver's seat instead of letting other people drive the course of your life. So that's what we're here to advocate. It's I know a lot of it sounds like a lot of like hard truths and tough love, but number one, it's factual. And number two, we've done it over and over and over and over and over with women just like you, with very similar flavor of struggles and circumstances. And we've watched them thrive despite it.
I think one thing I want to add to that too, and I said this to our team yesterday, right? We have team calls and we talk a lot about like clients we're working with, the struggles that they're having, and as far as like getting through to people. And one of our core values is integrity. And one of the things that I had to remind them of is that my job is not to tell you what you want to hear. It's to tell you what you need to hear. And when we talk about trust, you're not going to trust me if I feed you a mouthful of bullshit because it sounds good, because it's what you want to hear, because you want to know it's easy, that you're just one food, one supplement, one quick fix detox away from your desires. Like, I can't do that. What I can do is tell you stuff that you probably don't want to hear, and you can throw me middle fingers all day. But once you actually implement it and you do it consistently and you start to see progress, you're going to go, I fucking hate her, but she was honest. And I can live with that.
I'd rather be trusted than liked. I'll tell you that.
Skinny isn't going to last you very long, and it's not going to take you very far.
The women who focus on being skinny are the same ones that struggle with osteoporosis, bone density loss, and
health issues.
Big time.
You want to have GI issues. You want to have hormone imbalances, like true hormone imbalance, whatever the fuck that means, right? Hormone deficiencies. You want to have neuroticism. You want to run anxious. You want to like make your entire world around restriction over exercise, so you aren't able to focus when you're out to lunch with your friends because you're so stressed and anxious about what the fuck's on the menu and if you can eat anything, and then you're nervous to tell them no because you don't want them to know that you're struggling with your relationship with food. Like, you can live that life. It's just not going to be living at all. It sounds like hell to me, and I know that, and I've lived it.
You'll have to accept that the way you've been going about this and what you think you know could be totally wrong. Right? We're not here to tell you our way is perfect. You don't even have to fucking listen to us. You can exit out right now. That's fine. For every one of you that gets pissed off, triggered, and leaves, there'll be 100 who get a lot of value from this and decide to change their lives. That being said, people who, like, let's say that you've been struggling with your weight for a long time and you have this ideal of being skinny. When you see a skinny, bone-thin woman, you think, oh, that was how I want to look. When Kate and I see a bone-skinny woman, we see disordered eating, everything Kate just laid out, some kind of destructive relationship with food, some kind of body dysmorphia, some kind of huge struggle with, on the dietary front, of labeling foods good or bad, some kind of punishment system where if you do eat a bad food, you have to punish yourself with harsh restriction or fasting or et cetera. That's what I see. I'm not saying every super thin woman. Some people are just genetically very prone to being skinny. But for a lot of people, there's a weight loss drug behind it. There's, super over exertion with super under consumption. That's what I typically see when I see someone who looks unhealthily skinny.
Well, and this is where I enjoy playing devil's advocate, so I'm going to do it now. People will sit there and shame people who are overweight constantly. You're unhealthy, you're lazy. Nobody sit there and shames a frail woman, right? We celebrate thinness. It is not the embodiment of health. We sit there and shame obese people that are in the gym, walking, trying to change their lives, but they don't look fit. If you think skinny is healthy, again, there are people who are skinny that can be healthy. Yes, that's not the average person. And so health does not have a body weight or a body size, but it does have strength, cognitive function, energy, power, libido, joy, playfulness, peace, calm. It's not just a aesthetic state. It's an internal state too. And as somebody who's worked with people on both sides of the entire spectrum of eating disorders, I can tell you what it takes for them to do that is also the same thing they don't want to be in. It is fucking hell. And so thinking that just glorifying any type of extreme restriction is going to bring you something, I'm telling you, that's naive.
The people that you look at on social media and movies, etc., who you think have an ideal life because of the way they look, I promise you that everyone has struggles, everyone has pitfalls, everyone has problems, right? And so when you see these influencers on social media and otherwise who have a certain body and you're like, oh, their life must be great because they look like that. I promise you, everyone's carrying a bag of shit behind them, and it's not all it's cracked up to be. And I love what you just said, which is health does not have a weight or size attached to it, right? I think that's very, very important for women specifically to keep in mind, especially when if you're thinking about BMI or you think that you need to be a certain, waist size. Health is an independent variable of that. Now, obviously, there are some overlays there. Like if you're severely overweight, that's never healthy. If you're obese, that's never healthy. But there's not a perfect size or weight where you all of a sudden have health. Health is created by your values and what you demonstrate through your actions over time.
And again, just to mirror that, anybody who's overweight, first of all, they know they're overweight. They don't need you to fucking tell them. They're well aware. We can have this stigma around obesity. It's unhealthy. Yes, I will support that 100%. We idolize the opposite. And I think that in itself is detrimental because it creates this push. And I think it's more so for women than men. Men always want to be bigger, stronger, bulkier, right? That's men. They don't want to be too small. Women will do almost anything. Their hair is falling out. Their skin is brittle. Their nails are brittle. It's not health. And I can make this point. Have you guys seen Venus and Serena Williams?
Jacked.
They're fucking jacked. They're fit as shit and they're strong as hell. Ariana Grande. Right? They are not her. But I can guarantee they have more energy. They're way more mentally strong, physically strong, capable, and longevity-wise, they're going to be fucking killer.
They're going to look great in their 50s, 60s, 70s.
But that's the differential that I want you guys to make. And there are other athletes. Olympic athlete. They're not frail, right? They're also not skinny. Some of them are what you would call as thick, right? But it's at the end of the day, I would rather be in that position than be on the other side where I know, I feel, and I've been there. This is where I'm I talk about the inner world of it because I've lived it. It sucks. My dad, at the age of 55 at the time, could walk faster than me because I did not have enough energy coming into my body, and I was depleted of electrolytes. So my ability to have contractions throughout my body was minimal. It's that is humiliating. I think I was 20 something. My dad was 55. It's just one of those things where you think smaller is better and you're more worthy or you're more attractive. And I can let men speak on what they find attractive. Your empowerment position is not on either side of the extreme. It's where you feel best and where you look your best with shape, density, strength, energy, focus, peace, playfulness. Right? That is the ideal. And that looks different for everybody. And the other thing I wanted to say earlier when we talk about kind of our blueprint and what is true and what is evidence, we told you the what. How you go about applying that is unique to you. And that's where coaching comes in, right? Because not everybody just gets these 4 phases and is here you go do these things. It's this is the what, these are the principles that work. There are things that change, there are things that don't. This is the thing that doesn't change, right? Thermodynamics doesn't change. How we go about applying it is variable.
Right. that is a wonderful point for those of you who hear us advocating a calorie deficit and energy balance and saying, it's not one size fits all. Yeah, no shit. The way that you go about creating a caloric deficit can vary wildly from person to person and still not be doing a diet to get there. For instance, we just got a new lady yesterday who's a vegetarian, right? So she's still going to be in a caloric deficit. She's still going to have to eat a lot of protein. She's still going to have to walk a lot, and she's still going to have to lift weights. However, the way that she hits her protein goal and puts herself in a calorie deficit and her modality of exercise and what exercise she likes and her food preferences is going to vary wildly from another client that we work with who also is pursuing a caloric deficit but can eat all foods, right? And so as coaches, it's our job to help you custom curate a method for going about this that you can repeat for the rest of your life, and it never requires overhaul. We have never, ever taken anybody and completely overhauled their entire life in order to be in a caloric deficit. It's always looking at what you're already doing and just tweaking it a little bit over time. Little tweaks, little tweaks. Let's add a little movement. Let's add a little protein. Let's add some different food choices here and there. And so that is where it gets really fun and really personalized, because no two people that we work with go about the 4 phases and pursuing body transformation the exact same way. It's really fucking cool. That's one of my favorite parts about it.
Yeah. And I think even the same, this is where values are going to align with the what, right? So for anybody who's like, oh, but I kind of want to, like I mentioned Pilates earlier, or you want to try Peloton, or you want to do endurance, like the what is exercise, right? But how you go about applying exercise, you can choose, because any type of exercise is better than no exercise at all, right? Then you can look at strength training. Okay, well, strength training is the what, but how you go about it. Is it CrossFit? Is it powerlifting? Is it hypertrophy style? Is it endurance style training? Is it a group class? Like it doesn't, the how can change so long as the what is consistent. That is the habit. That's the behavior. The what has to be fundamentally a part of the way that you behave. How you go about doing that as you age, as decades pass, as your life changes, as your circumstances changes, that can be a variable. And just understanding that, it's like you don't have to do 5 days a week. You don't have to eat this way. You don't have to follow this thing. This is not a constant thing. And the moment that you box yourself in is the moment that you will inevitably get burnt out. And so just understanding that you can play with the how. I just need you to solidify the what.
And I think that wraps it up for today.
E.
If you have thoughts on this, questions, drop them in the comments. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, drop a question or a comment in the box. Anything you guys want us to talk about more, let us know. If you have specific questions, drop them. And if you enjoyed this, let us know. We love feedback, and we just use your feedback to create more content because you're just telling us exactly what you want to hear more about. So, you doing the Carmelo Anthony? That's the Carmelo Anthony. It's like this, though. You got to turn it horizontal.
No.
What is that, a gang sign?
No.
No, this is mellow. It's like,
I don't want to be mellow.
Who do you want to be?
Kate.
We'll work on that. Anyway, hope you enjoyed listening, y'all. Thanks so much.
Goodbye.